Derek here at Castaway Studios. Welcome to our first plugged-in glance and first impressions of the Zoom L-8 liveTrak. Okay, straight down to business. First thing I noticed about the liveTrak when I took it out of its box was the sort of, I guess, the miniaturized version of everything. There's a lot of stuff crammed in here. I've used the Zoom L12 quite a bit and find it a terrific balance between an actual mixing desk and a recorder slash interface to use for podcasting. And I love it very much. So Zoom clearly have gone into bat and gone at the Rodecaster, or for the same reason as the Rodecaster, recognised a very strong need and market for podcasters and home users as well as professionals to be able to have as many functions as possible in one unit. So here it is. So I've got it plugged in. I've got an SD card in, and I've got it plugged in to the computer. So first thing is the power supply. So one big thing that I've noticed, and here it is, I'll show you a picture of it turned over. It uses a micro USB cable and goes through this little S-bend thing in order to prevent it accidentally pulling out. And I've done several experiments, and as long as your batteries are okay, if you unplug the whole unit while recording, nothing changes. It just maintains. It maintains perfectly fine. I did fall into a bit of a trap. I turned it on, plugged it into the USB, left it on overnight, and of course the computer went to sleep, and it was charging. It wasn't charging from a socket USB charger like an iPhone or something. It was on the computer. So the batteries were dead in the morning. First trap for young players for you there. So switch the damn thing off, which you really should do anyway. Right, okay, so power. That is terrific. I'm not going to use the game changer all day, but it is massive. Having batteries on board, there are 4 AA's. It runs off 4 AA batteries. And it does allow you to put this in a little case and go and do your podcast everywhere. It's probably going to replace the Zoom H6 in a lot of situations for me. When I'm advising people on what they should get, if they are wanting to be able to pull it out and set up a studio in their office or something like that, or in their kitchen, and they do want to move around to different places, the H6 has always been an absolute fantastic resource. But this thing may well tackle that. Okay, so first impressions, the sliders are there. They are quite short. So I'm yet to use this in full podcasting. So we will find out if there's any dramatic changes, or whether it's a nice smooth transition in the sliders. They're quite short, so it's something to get used to, because I think you'll agree the Rodecaster Pro, the sliders are quite long. The next thing is the inputs. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 XLR inputs. They're not just XLRs, they're the twin use XLR, which I quite like, because you can also, as well as putting XLR cable into there, you can actually put a 1/4-inch jack in there, like a guitar lead or something like that, which is very, very handy if you're doing vocals and a bit of instrument stuff and you just want to put something straight into there. And there's that, and then there's also tracks 7 and 8. They're going to take a bit of talking about later on, tracks 7 and 8. There's a lot going on, but we have to save that for later on. So the other thing I noticed immediately was the little teeny tiny screen. Once again, we're used to some big touch screens and stuff like that in our worlds. Very similar to it wouldn't surprise me if it was exactly the same as the Zoom H4n, which a lot of us podcasters are well and truly used to. The knob here starts controlling things, and all this panel here are very, very much interconnected. So to use the settings inside here, I've discovered you just press settings, but it doesn't always say settings, because this whole area here actually shares these buttons for various purposes. Watch this. Let's have a look at these 4 buttons here. So it may look confusing, but after about 5 minutes, it isn't. So I'm currently on recorder. So that's going to be my main use. Recorder, and then you've got your classic transport buttons up here. Record, play, stop, fast forward, blah, 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 tempo. And there's settings, and that's your way in to the settings, the SD, what sample rate you want to record at, and various formatting the SD card, and all this kind of stuff, the usual stuff, overdub as well. So that's pressing that button just makes it like this is the way it was designed, just like the L12. But if you press scene, then you've got a whole nother set of buttons highlighted. The little orange things here become something different, and they are programmable scenes. This is pretty darn cool if you're regularly doing different shows or different setups. You might record your jazz band on Tuesday nights, but you also might record your podcast at work with the same machine. You can have the whole thing set up, the scene, the effects and everything, and save that scene into there and then just bring it back by choosing the scene. I haven't set any scene, so they all look the same to me right now. So that's the scene thing. It's pretty cool. I'm used to this from the L12. I didn't actually use it because I would just sit there and it's a podcast studio with 4 microphones. That's about it. There's nothing fancy happens in here as far as setting scenes go, but it's a great option for preparing for different types of shows and not having to reset everything. Takes the risk out as well. Right, so the mixer button, very, very similarly, you can actually select, this is going to take a little while to get into, you can select, this is the master selected right now. So when I adjust these mixers, I've got to stop doing that while I'm talking because we're actually running this audio through OBS for the first time. Okay, so you can set these wherever you want them, right? And go, all right, that's how I like it. Right, so there's your mixer settings. Then you can go to mix A, right? And that's a separate mixer setting. And you can put those where you want those ones. Let's say that. I'm keeping that. Like mix A clearly is, everything's kind of high. So that's a setting for mix A, right? So that's one particular mixer setting, just for quick reference. But watch what happens when I put it back to master. Can you see that these little LEDs aren't matching? Number one, there's no microphones plugged into them, but they're not matching where the sliders are. That's because it's remembered. So the first thing that happens when you change your mixer setting, right, is it goes back, no matter where your sliders are, it goes straight back to where you left it when you moved to a different mixer setting. And this is important. If I go to another mix and I change everything around, I muck around, I go, oh my God, that's right, I've got to quickly do that show, or this is the setting for when this guy plays his guitar and sings, then I can go back to master, and it doesn't matter where all your knobs are, it immediately goes back to that setting inside, regardless of whether it ignores the sliders, overrides them, and goes back to where it was the last time you were in that mix. But the way to override that is you take your slider to that point and then you've got control over your slider. I'll demonstrate on this track 7. Nothing. This won't have any effect until I've gone bam to there, and then this slider is now active and back to programming the master mix. So if I put that down there and then go to mix A, then back, you see it's now just set. Okay, don't want to get too complicated on that one, but it is a tremendous feature, and here's why. You can actually set up a mix in that so that you can switch to different setups for different parts of your show or different shows and all that. But without that mix being actually highlighted, you can apply that mix to your monitor out. So have a look up here. This is where you'd have all your headphones plugged in, right? So let's say you had someone or some kind of monitor, you wanted to send everything out, but you had some kind of, you were doing a live thing, some kind of copyright thing or whatever, right? So you wanted to take a particular audio track out of what comes out of there. So you'd set up mix C, right? So I'm going to press mix C, and I want all these tracks, but I really don't want that in there because that is controversial or whatever, and I want to use it on Facebook, and I don't want Facebook to hear that, all right? Or whatever, right? So you would make that mix C up like that, go back to master, right? And record whatever you do using the master. If you click this little switch up here to mix C, that channel will only send out the mix C setup. It'll get a totally different mix, right? And this generally would be handy for a mix minus setup, which is the act of doing a remote interview and have someone's voice come into the mixer and blend in with everyone else that's involved and all the other things that are involved in the recording, but then take everything back to them for their telephone without their own voice. So it's literally just chopping that one channel out of the mix. This is the traditional way of doing that. That's how I did it on the L12, which leads me to the next thing, the onboard mix minus. This is another special feature that has popped up on this unit, and you can see here there is a little TRRS cable, and it's wonderfully included in the box with the liveTrak l-8, and that goes in there. And I'm guessing that when you choose that channel there, channel 8 becomes the audio in from the telephone that you plug that into. Okay, you would plug that in using if it's an iPhone, you'd use the little dongle. I'll just get one and show you. Right, one of those. Plug that into the other end, chuck it into your phone, and Bob's your uncle. That automatically does the mix minus. I am yet to find out whether the USB programming of this actually can do a mix minus the way a Rodecaster Pro can, so that you can use it for Skype and Zoom and all that sort of thing, and it does it automatically. Let's find out. Going back to this little patch here, so that's the mixes and the different choices, which is an amazing feature on such a tiny little unit. And then you've got the fun one. Coming to the effects button, okay, the fourth use for this patch here, this area. Okay, so what you've got here is a situation where you individually adjust the effects, if you choose to, on each bus. Okay, so let's say I click track 1 that I'm on now, then I would select that, and then you can adjust the effects. Can you hear? This will be interesting because through the headphones, I can hear the full effects, right? It's like room echo. plate. So you can run through all the different effects. There's eight, a delay, a chorus, vocal 1, vocal 2, right? And you can mess with the amount and the adjustment and the parameters of these, which I'll take a quick picture of. Right, so that's kind of fun and probably good for music and singing rather than anything else. I mean, if you're clever enough and you've got a pre-programmed channel, let's say I had someone on channel 4. Now I'm going to put it back and I'll mute the effect. No longer a problem, right? So if I go to select channel 4, and I know that at some stage I'm getting someone to say something dramatic and I want it to finish in a big reverb, kind of trailed off reverb, then I'd select channel 4. I would put that up. I would get it to the effect I want. I would test it, and then I would keep the effect muted, and then that channel during the recording of the show, when I wanted that, I could simply unmute the effects, and it would suddenly kick off for that particular channel, and then unmute it again and mute it again when I'm done. Stuff like that. So you can have some fun, but you just got to get used to how to control it for a live environment. There's a lot more information to come about what effects get sent through. Like, I don't think the effects get sent through to the DAW and the SD card, but the stereo mix track that you also got the option of recording both on the SD and the DAW, just the same as with the Rodecaster Pro, will contain all the effects and stuff like that. So if you wanted to do a bunch of live style recordings, or you could even use that section of that stereo mixdown track if you wanted to use the bit that had the effect on it. But the thing is, with post-production, you can have much more control over your effects afterwards anyway, in all the different DAWs. All right, so that's the last part of this area here. Now, next thing we're going to tackle is the recording. Okay, so the first thing to do when you're recording is select what channels you want to record. Say track 1, and then just like any of the other Zoom products in the past, you make sure there's enough time left on the SD card, and it's the format you want to record it at. You can get in there and assign a project to that recording. I personally use the SD card recordings as a redundancy, so I just literally just record them, knowing I can get in and take them out if something went wrong with the computer's hard drive or the DAW recording or something went wrong there. But it's really encouraging to know that's going into exactly the same quality level onto that SD card with battery backup always. So I don't fuss myself on arranging where all the folders are and stuff like that. I just record it and know that I can go get it out if I need to. So you've chosen your tracks you want to record. Just like most Zoom products, you press the record button and nothing happens. It sort of arms it all, and then you press play and kicks it off. I say to all my clients, if the numbers aren't rolling on, something's wrong, right? So I don't care how many red lights are flashing. I don't care how many red dots are lit on the screen. If those numbers aren't rolling along, then you ain't recording. So that is the number one thing to check. Don't just press record and go, we're done. Look at the numbers. And that to me, that covers every single situation. Video, audio, on the desk or on the computer. I'll go on about that till the cows come home. It's very important. All right, so that's it as far as recording. I've got nothing more to say on that one. If that button's on, then this is just a normal little recording device. All right. So next thing we'll look at is tracks 7 and 8. My first impression when I took this out of the box was, oh my God, what is happening in tracks 7 and 8? And like all things, take the time to just process it calmly through your mind, and I was quite impressed. Let's have a look. So there's a lot going on here, and until I put it into daily use, we won't really have an opinion on how smooth and seamless it all is. But let's take it just like this area down here with all these choices. Let's take this one thing at a time. So these are the key buttons here. Input select there, right? So when you press that, it changes what's going into this track, right? And that. So right now, I've selected it to line in. It's flashing because there's nothing plugged into it. But that's it. So it's just simply a normal everyday track for your band rehearsal or whatever. Okay. Press it again. USB 1 and 2. Now this thing will accept 4 tracks of USB coming back from the computer, which I'm sure will be very, very handy for different situations, because the other channel, jumping over the other channel prematurely, there's USB 3 and 4. So you could potentially have your computer sending a Skype call to one of them and the just playing a music track or something like that to the other. But that's kind of handy. So anyway, USB 1 and 2, which would be the one I'd more likely use to listen back for a start. So using that track for listening back to recordings on the door and stuff like that, if you're running your room monitors out of the desk. And then it comes down and lights up these 3 orange buttons, which is, we're familiar now because the Rodecaster, but sound pad, right? So, oh my God. I didn't know there was anything programmed in. Let's do it again. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm pretty sure you just got your ears blasted off there. Okay, so there's jazz in there. So we're yet to find out how you actually... We're yet to find out how you actually program those. I'm guessing it's not going to be that big a deal. So 3 choices in the sound pad there. Now, I'm wondering if you can pile in more and more and select as you go. But we'll find out at some stage. All right, so that selects that sound pads in track 7. Let's go over to the other one. That's very similar, except there's one extra thing. There's a little LED there, which actually selects that track to be the one we talked about before. That is for the mix minus telephone call, or you can plug the other end of that TRRS cable. I'll show it to you. They're hard to find, but it's got the 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. So 3 little black rings on it. That's very important because it's got to have an earth, and it's got to have the vocals in and the stereo out, right? For people to use their headsets and the headphones with the microphone for making remote phone calls and their phones and stuff like that. You can also put that into your laptop and use that for Skype and all that kind of thing. I'm guessing, yes, that would be a mono track, I'm guessing that would stop you being able to use the sound pads on the right side. So it's pre-planning what's assigned to those sound pads, I guess. But I'll do another video on using those sound pads and programming them very soon. But very handy. Obviously not a nice big colourful sound pad to hit and not get wrong. You have to be a little bit more. You'd have to be a bit more careful pressing the right ones. But the feature is there if you need it to play a pre-recorded interview, or what I do when I'm recording my own podcasts is, because I want to minimize the edit, is I sit there, do the pre-roll welcoming, and then I just press it and we just sit there through the intro, which gets recorded into the DAW, so I don't have to go and drop it in later on. And it also gives your guests an idea of what the show's about in case they have got no clue, and gets us warmed up without having to say a word. So that is a very handy thing for podcasting, that's for sure. So that is track 7 and 8. We've mentioned on it slightly before, but this top area here, you can have all there's 4 headphones out. One's committed to being the master, and the other 3 are reprogrammable to a programmed mix down here. But if you have all these buttons clicked up, all the headphones are getting the same thing. And that would be your most likely podcast situation. I would be more likely to have this one for the producer and maybe put a splitter in the second one and send it to your less likely to use a headphone guests, and then your hosts and everything. So you take as many as you want off there, but I'd probably split one of them for the less important people that just simply need to listen into mix minus phone conversations and things like that, which you can't have through the house speakers. Moving along a little bit, you've got this. I love it. Okay, you could send one of these out to your PA. Let's say you're in a situation where you're recording a live podcast at a venue that already has their own PA. Then you would take the microphones straight into this, so you're recording on board and recording into your laptop. But then these 2 XLR outs would go into their master, into their mixer as 2 in, and then that can operate as the house system with foldback and stuff like that choices. So I love that, and it does take a professional out away from having to take him out of the stereo, 1/4-inch stereo headphone jacks. There is, of course, phantom power. It sort of goes without saying these days, but the good thing is you don't have to go into any settings to get it on. You just press the red button if you plug in. Like, I always keep a Rode NT1A microphone on a boom stand at the back of my desk, so that I can swing it around to someone who's doing a one-off voiceover, and it gets a beautiful, crisp, clean sound. But that does need phantom power, so it's nice to know I can just plug it in. There it is right there, just sits on the desk, right? And I can just plug it into one of these tracks, hit. You'll see that my voice went quiet for a sec as the desk got used to that change. And then I'm away. I can start using that without having to go into any settings. High Z's kind of cool. You got two tracks that can operate like that, and then you've got these pads. These other 4 are pads, which means if you're putting line in, like let's say you're putting something out of a tape deck or something like that, it's going to send a line level. If you put that into a microphone thing, you'd have to have your gains on virtually nil, and you'd lose your audio quality. Whereas you can put the pads on, drops at 26 decibels, and allows you to still have that incremental control over the gain and the volume in the mix. So that's kind of really handy on 4 of those tracks. Plugging the thing into the DAW, into the computer. I have a PC here. Was pretty much seamless. I plugged the USB in. I got onto the Zoom website, installed their driver software, and I'll just run you through what I did there. Options, preferences, devices. Where are we? Device. And I spent a bit of time trying to get it to work on Wasapi, and then I went, oh, hang on, it's that. So you just program your first and last track. Okay. So there's more tracks than what you think, because it also sends out a master track. All right. So, output range, so you can actually output 4 different tracks. I haven't got it doing that. I don't have a use for it right now. Okay, so sample rates and all that. But I literally just clicked that on there and make sure that first one and last one was everything that was available, because I do want the option of having the master left and master right in there. I love that they are named that. So your track 1 and microphone 1 come up in the, let's have a look. So you see that? I've programmed that input stereo to master left and master right. So you can see that's the same track as my template was the Rodecaster was using. So I just simply select that, and then I'll go to number 1, input mono, and select track number 1. And you can see in that little green bit there, that is, I don't like this template. I made it black so that it wouldn't shine, but I usually use a light colored template in Reaper. But with my glasses, if I have the screen in front of me with a light template, it reflects off my glasses. So it's vanity, pure vanity. I usually use one that uses an LED that runs all the way up and down the width, so I can open up a track and get a much more detailed idea of the input. All right, so that's that, and you can program it however you want. But that was seamless. That was absolutely seamless. It just went in and started working. So, yeah, smooth as silk. And I did do that without having to turn the computer on and off. I could unplug the mixer and plug it back in, and we were away instantly again. The LEDs started rocking immediately. I reckon that pretty much sums it up. The next thing we'll talk about, I'll do some videos on the smaller details, and the big event will be the Rodecaster Pro shootout, where it looks like we'll be trying to pinpoint the different situations where each one would be the best bet. But we're going to have a lot of fun with this machine, that's for sure.